Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show today. I appreciate you joining me today. If you have ever felt like a cog in the machine or a number on a spreadsheet, this is the video for you. We are going to talk about going from employee to intrapreneur, and this will either make you succeed in your current organization or tell you it's time to get a new job. Either way, we're moving forward and setting you up for success. So without further ado, let's dive in. So what does a intrapreneur mean? What is it? What is this? So an intrapreneur is someone who wants to function like an entrepreneur or thinks like an entrepreneur in terms of growing the business, making an impact, really taking either your department or your division, or again, the entire company, depending on the size and your ability to impact, to the next level, but you're not trying to be the top of the totem pole. So I myself, have identified for me that I don't think I'm best as a number one, for instance, being that CEO or president or something along those lines. I think I'm somewhere going to end up in my career that I will provide the most value as like a number 2 through a number 5. So I'm not taking the risk of the entrepreneur. I don't have everybody's lives on my shoulders or all of the investors or all of the money or all of the revenue, right? Like the buck doesn't fully stop with me, but I am still high enough up the chain that I am at that CEO or president's kind of right hand and making that big, huge impact. And so I would consider myself to be an intrapreneur, in spirit. And so that's what we're looking for here is you have that entrepreneurial spirit, but you don't want to deal with starting a business, running a business, etc. And so it's kind of combining these two things to make you elevate your career. All right, so let's dive into a little bit more on the tactical side. So the first thing that I want to convey here in this message that's going to be the difference between success in this mindset and honestly not even fully embracing it or falsifying to yourself that you're embracing it, which is shifting from being a compliance focused person to a creative focused person. And what I mean here is compliance is by just being an employee. You're just doing what you're told. You're following instructions. You don't really own your operation or even your colleagues' operations and what they are doing. You're just kind of going through the motions, doing what you're supposed to do. Okay, where the creative mindset is going to be taking responsibility for not just yourself, but responsibility for others and actively seeking out areas for opportunity, taking initiative and implementing solutions, or at the very least, presenting these solutions. Okay, and so what you want to be doing is on a regular basis, doing something as simple as what change could I make today, or what change can we make over the next week or the next month that would improve how the team operates. Now, this level of improvement is going to be measured in a couple different ways. And that's the biggest thing that you also need to understand here is what is the measurement of success for your department? How do you translate to the revenue cycle of the given company? So whether you are on the front lines and you are, for instance, in a retail environment and you are directly selling people, upselling them into add-ons, if you are in finance, if you are in HR, understanding how your role impacts revenue, because everybody does, whether it's directly or indirectly. And an example of each of these is on the direct side. Like I said, sales, you are directly impacting revenue by you selling more things, upselling more add-ons, increasing the margin or selling higher margin things. You are directly impacting revenue. Indirect, looking at my background as something like IT, where typically IT or technology doesn't actually make money, but it makes everybody else do their job more efficiently, more consistently. And that in turn saves the company money and time and it not having to invest so much manpower into resolving potential issues. So that's an indirect way of affecting the revenue cycle. So you need to map this out in your role. So if you are going to adopt that creative solution, initiative-oriented mindset of being that intrapreneur, then you need to understand and create that map of, okay, this is what I'm doing. I am in customer service. I am not selling things, but I am presenting the face of the organization. And if I produce a bad relationship, that bad relationship might cause churn because they didn't like the interaction with the organization. They're no longer going to renew their membership, or they're no longer going to purchase the hotel room or whatever it might be. So correlating back to that. Now, the question is, how can we make this better? How can we make you better? How can we make the team better? So now that you understand how you relate to the revenue and you have that map, then you can figure out the primary ways that you can impact it. Again, if you're in sales where it's a direct method, then actually learning all of your products, learning the margins behind the scenes, knowing which products produce the best margins and produce the most profit. Upselling consistently learning those techniques. Again, if you're in the indirect method, like I am in IT, okay, well, where is our biggest cost center? Where's the biggest pain points? Where are we doing so much manual process? Interviewing people throughout the company to figure that out, and then coming up with a solution for that. So this is a level of discovery, and this is why you could look at the micro scale, which I think is a great place to start, of what change could I make today? And that's probably usually going to involve something of just you. What could you do to be better? And then expand that maybe to your team, and then go beyond your team to the broader scope of the company. But this is one of the key aspects, like I said, shifting from being just a compliant employee to creative problem solver and thinking about the bigger picture. Now, the other aspect I mentioned to this, which most people do not think of or are not on board with, is taking responsibility and ownership of everything. If any of you have ever read Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, or if you're familiar with that concept, this will change your life. Or another concept adjacent to this is from Alex Hormozy, of where you place the blame fingers, where the power goes. And so if you do not take ownership of all the actions you take, all the thoughts you think, all the feelings you have, and even expand beyond that, right? If you notice the coworker next to you isn't doing things as optimally as they could, take responsibility for that. Not in a public sense of going to your leader and saying, well, I'm the reason that John failed. No, but when you notice the mess up, go to John and be like, hey, would you like some help? I see that we can maybe make some opportunities here. Would you like some feedback? Would you like to improve? Right? Asking the question, opening up the door, and maybe they won't, but then you can also ask, well, why? Right? Like, why don't you want to do the best? And then you can kind of maybe get them into admitting that they're actually not willing to do their best, but maybe they want to. And you can ask them, right? Ask them about the results. Do you not want more money? Do you not want to take care of your family more? Do you not want to achieve more by working less? Right? Like almost kind of selling them on the dream to some extent. And then you can slowly branch out and improve people. And as this scope of your ownership increases, it will be seen by supervisors, leaders, managers, etc. So this is the first step in taking that mindset shift into being an intrapreneur, is looking at the bigger picture, mapping out how your position relates to the revenue cycle, identifying the biggest areas of improvement based off of your mapping to the revenue cycle, and then going from there. And that leads into the second thing. Maybe it's something bigger. Maybe it's a big process overhaul. So if I had to give you an idea, I just worked with a client very recently who we worked together to do a 30, 60, 90-day plan to get him into the next level of leadership. And then crazily enough, we are actually going to be working together on, now he has the opportunity for a 5-year path to executiveship. And so that's going to be the next evolution of what we are working on as well. But the core of that initial 30, 60, 90-day plan, as well as that path to executiveship, is once you have the ideas, you have these things mapped out, then it's pitching them. So, and sometimes it's also just simply taking action, but generally it's going to start with a pitch. So let's say, giving you a real world example, you notice that you come into a company like a client that I worked with had, and there was no project management structure. There was a lot of initiatives that were happening nationwide. So, but different regions were functioning in different ways, which led to mixed results. And this was in the telecom industry. And what happened was the company at large could not predict what the costs were going to be, what the timelines were going to be, what the implementation were going to be. It was just sporadic. And while you could identify that this particular region was maybe performing the best and had the best idea, you still didn't know if it was optimal. And there was just no level of consistency, because even intra-region, there was inconsistency. So the person that I worked with, they decided to take control. So they, in their region, implemented a formal project management structure from, in the beginning, using a waterfall strategy that was heavily discovery-oriented, heavily budget and forecasting-oriented, and really mapping out what that process looked like. They also worked very heavily with the front lines and the boots on the ground. So getting the different stakeholders, not just from the strategic point of view, but the actual implementation and execution of the project point of view. This included the vendors, and asked a bunch of different questions. Hey, how long does this typically take? What are your predictions? What are the costs? What is the cost split there between material and time? how do we prevent delays? What are the best relationships of companies that you've worked with that enable your project to be successful? Like, he really invested a lot of time in just simply talking to people, interviewing to people, all the different parties involved. So stakeholder in this case does not necessarily mean that important executive or the C-level person, but it was when you have to think about this particular telecom implementation and revamp that the company was going through nationwide, who is every party involved? And then let's bring them into a room, develop a process based off of everybody's historical knowledge, and implement it. And this actually ended up resulting in over, if I recall, I believe it was an 8-figure savings in this particular region. And this savings was then allowed to be reinvested. Crazily enough, a few years later, the company actually decided that they were moving into a different specialty of telecom and ended up being able to sell off all of the implementations and projects that they did in this particular realm as well. So in one particular region, they had 8 figures in savings. Map that out to all the different regions, which I believe was 5 across the US. So even if you went with the low end of a $10 million savings, that's $50 million savings. Then they sold them at a profit for 3 to 5 years later. So then that's another 50 to 100 million. Like, it was an insane initiative. And this came down to simply identifying what it was. It took a broader spectrum of the implementation, but this was one where what happened is he started it on a micro scale. So he didn't pitch initially. He did it within his region, within his people, and what he had control over. When he then had the data being like, look, this is how much of an improvement that I've made in this since coming into this position. Do we want to make this the SOP across the nation? Propose that to the executives that he had access to within the organization. They agreed. And then that's when he then trained the other regional people that were in his same position, but for those various regions, and implemented that company-wide. So what this starts with is identifying the issue, clearly identifying the issue, either performing the solution or proposing the solution. But the solution here actually is going to be action items, not strategy. It needs to be what people are doing in this process from start to finish. So don't stick to the 50,000 foot view. Take it down, not necessarily to the 10-foot view to where, you have an exact, left foot, right foot, right foot. But hey, we're going to run a quarter mile. So do like 1,000-foot view. So it's still an overview of the process, but it's not so detailed that, you're having a 50-page document that nobody's ever going to read from an SOP perspective. And then having the expected impact. Again, if you're proposing this, then you want to have data that you've done through research or through colleagues or people in your network to implement this. If it's from your own that you're pitching, so you've done it in a micro scale, your department, your division, your region, whatever it is, have that data backed up to then propose to the executive. So this is, again, taking that next step from, okay, so you've shifted your mindset from compliance employee to being a creative intrapreneur. So you began to take ownership, see things at the bigger picture. Now that allowed you to identify gaps in process, inefficiencies, areas for opportunity. You've stated those problems. You've either implemented them on a micro scale to gather real specific data to your company, or you are then researching to figure out what the best solutions to this are, proposing that solution in form of what the actions to be taken are and what the expected impact is, so that way the company can measure, was it correct? And your impacts here are, again, relating back to how your department or what you oversee relates to the bottom line. So this could simply be cost savings. It could be direct revenue generation. It could be time efficiency. It also could be something qualitative like morale. If it's just a quality of life improvement to where employees are just more engaged, that is shown enough to also have significant impact. Okay. So aside from that example, I want to give a couple like giant examples that I find fascinating. So one is actually Gmail. At Google, most of us use Gmail more than likely, that or iCloud email. But Gmail was actually just a side project from an employee inside Google. Like, it was just this off-the-wall thing on the side, had no intention of going public, and then it was proposed. And then it became one of their flagship products. Okay, another one, which, going a little bit old school here, is Post-it notes from 3M. Okay. So if you look this up, it was essentially an employee had a botched adhesive experiment that became what we know as, the partially adhered to Post-it note that was just adopted worldwide. Going a little bit smaller, because not all of us work for huge companies like that. And I mentioned the previous one of project management. So something that goes back to me in particular. So I, from my IT background, wanted to overhaul our help desk operation at a particular organization that I worked at. It was just something to where there wasn't a clear escalation structure. People were holding onto tickets too long. Customers were very unhappy. And honestly, it became that customers didn't want to follow process because it was so bad and so broken that they picked out who the key players were or the people that would get stuff done, and they would just go to them directly. And then this leads to inconsistent workloads, and it was just a nightmare. So it really became, what are the common themes? What are our criteria for escalation? What are the criteria for who is solving what? What are people's specialties? What are people's growth paths? Aligning all of this together, and really, it was a pretty overnight success, actually. And it was honestly a 2-page document. I know it sounded like I mentioned a lot of different variables there, but it was a 2-page document of saying, here's the people in each of their roles. Here's what their specialties and growth paths are. So here's who should be handling these things or have the growth opportunity to handle these other ones. Here's the escalation path. Here's how you determine severity and priority. And we decided to shift specifically to a escalation path that was also based on time. So if you couldn't resolve the particular issue in a certain amount of time, then you escalated it up. And that prevented tickets and issues being held stagnant or too long and not being prioritized. And so it just kept things moving. And we literally were able to reduce our time to resolution on tickets by over 70%. Like, that's how inefficient it was. Customer satisfaction skyrocketed. We had over 98% customer satisfaction. And so it's these little, that was a big thing, I guess, but it's a mixture of these little and big things that it is just stop waiting for permission and just take action. And if you have the ability to take the action, I'm always a proponent, most of the time, I guess. So maybe not always, but majority of time, I'm going to tell people, ask for forgiveness and not for permission. Because if you make an improvement, that improvement has results, and then you get come down on for it or you get punished for it, that tells me one of two things. One is you might have a bad leader, and that's where you kind of have a fork in the road of, do you potentially go above that leader's head and say, hey, we made this change resulted in this improvement, and then we were just told to not make that improvement. Does that make sense to you? Or the other side is, it might be time to look for another job. It might be time to go to another company, because I promise you, no matter what line of work that you are in, whether you are in the blue collar side of building things, repairing things, trades, etc., or you're on the white collar side of finance, IT, sales, marketing, I don't care. If you are genuinely making things better, functioning as an intrapreneur, and that's not welcomed in the organization and the leaders that you're working for, there's somebody out there who will. So this is one of the key aspects of this to know as well, is you shouldn't be scared, because this is the type of stuff that's going to go on your resume. Is when you do make these impacts, this is what that means. Whenever you hear on your resume, you want to showcase your achievements, showcase your results, and showcase your impact, this is what you want to do. And people are just so scared because they feel like they want permission, or, oh, it's the boss and the hierarchy and this and that. And who cares? Would you rather be slapped on the wrist for doing something better and then realize, okay, maybe this isn't the place for me? Or would you rather just continue hating your life every day and being miserable and being bored and not going anywhere, not moving up the ladder, and wondering why everybody else is passing you and you're not achieving what you want to achieve? So the biggest thing that most people, like I said, kind of piggybacking off of that, where most people struggle is on the fear side. They are fearful that they're going to get punished, that it's going to come down, or that there's going to be some bureaucratic response, or that it's going to be a terrible idea, and then you're going to be rejected, or whatever it might be. And here's the thing. All of these are positives. They aren't negative. Like I said, so let's say you do have a bureaucratic response, or you had this giant negative response from the top down, and they don't want to improve, and they don't want to take you to the next level. Okay, Sweet. Now you know to start shopping. That just signaled you, not that you are a bad employee or you made a bad decision, but it's that maybe where you're at and who you are as a person is not the correct alignment, because you clearly want to push things forward. You want to evolve and you want to innovate. Take that to the marketplace where somewhere, because I promise you somewhere will value that very, very heavily. And the other one is the fear side, like I said. And here's the thing. Let's say it does get rejected. Now we're back to that same scenario of the bureaucratic. Okay, maybe now I need to look elsewhere. Maybe I need to go, again, skip my current leader and go to the next leader and see what they think. Let's say it turns out to fail. Okay, now you know what not to do, right? Or was it, hey, I was 85% correct, but this 15, I really failed. Let me correct the 15. Now we have the winning ticket, right? So there's that side as well. Like most of us, if you look back at your life, learn more from failure than we do success. Like success is more of a reinforcement mechanism than a learning mechanism. Failure is going to be the learning mechanism because it gives you the actual prompt to say, well, what went wrong? What could we have done better? Why didn't this work? Right? What were the variables that I missed? And take it from there. And again, these could be discussions with your leaders, with the people that you proposed to this to and accepted it, is that if it's not working, then work with them to figure out maybe they might have experience or insight or data to tell us, oh, here was the potential issue, right? Failure is more valued than success. So you should not be scared of it, right? Most people that are anywhere remotely successful, and again, if you want to be an above average achiever, anybody who is that has just a graveyard of failures and mistakes. And if you look at any aspect of your life, this is the case, right? I don't care if you've been in sports, if you've been in music, if you wanted mathematics or science or whatever, right? Like you fail and fail and fail and fail until you don't. And more often than not, your failures exceed your successes in quantities, but the successes stack over time. Okay. So let's bring this all back together. So how do we go from employee to entrepreneur? First is a mindset shift. Understand that you don't just want to follow instructions. You don't want to not take ownership, but you need to take ownership and responsibility for yourself and those around you, and always be looking for the opportunity, no matter how big or small. And those opportunities are going to be linked from your job function in your department directly to the revenue cycle. And how do you solve that to continue to positively impact the revenue cycle? You want to identify these areas. You want to either take the action if you have the power to do so, or pitch the new idea to the appropriate leaders. That pitch, though, needs to consist of the problem that you're solving, the actual actions to be taken to solve the problem, and then the overall expected impact or the resulting impact if it's something you've already done on sort of a micro scale. All right. And then when it comes to what you need to overcome, ignore the bureaucracy, ignore the risk factor, ignore the fear. Do it anyways. And if you want to know how to get over that fear and how to take action, stay tuned for my upcoming videos. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this can help you go from employee to entrepreneur and make a difference. Leave a comment below if you have any questions or comments or feedback for the content. If you like this, hit the like button, subscribe, and notification bell. And until next time, I appreciate you joining me today. Thank you.